we have to understand how to modify your system. We first have to recognize how to liquidize our assets and informations of our own system, how we use that in 7 lines of provision, all dimensional layers of space and time. Now this basically helps you to get in position location of balance. And understand that it's through formula of your own lines, E factors of work equation, location setting, your X1 lines of platforms, direct coordinates, XT lines of positional platform, coordinate, equiline, screen line, station, line position of flight over platform. It's all travels how you use your imagination system that gets everything line position of balance. Acknowledging everything of your body that it's going through, that's everything done through its clocking system. It's its own set position, its own settings. But processing that is also the body itself. And that's hard to do if you don't understand how this all works through its dream. The dream is just the directions, the releasing, the existing into the awakening of your mind. That's the dream. Now, once you stand the dream, that's direct. Let's look into basic locations. Redirect, okay, is reading something forward, backwards at the same time. That brings you always back into the center of operation, okay, which is you. It doesn't exist until you bring yourself into existing. So that comes into the mind, see, travel, okay, into the A, which is awakening through its awareness of travel. Then you come to the energy to its existing of its travel. Then you come into the releasing, remembering, and readjusting in set lines of travel, okay? Then you come into all levels of its directions, okay, of its dimensions of travel, okay, creating a dimensional sail. See, dimensional sail travel. Set locations, water lines, course settings, communications, convergence, soft line connections, high settings of travel communication. Okay, so that's what going forward and backwards means. It's creating a dimensional solar sail. That's what we can understand if I get position of this. Let's get in this settings. Okay, everything is a convergent system. Now it gets complicated if you understand what I'm doing. But you have to know what you're doing. That's the thing. Okay, what does that mean? That means what it is to you. It's not to anybody else. Everybody has their own individual system. Everybody has their own set position. Everybody has their own operation. Everybody has their own dream interpretation. Dream interpretation is all levels of direct and redirect. You're directing, readjusting your system, remembering your cycles, or releasing your system. That's why you cry. Crying is extremely important to the body system. Now, once the body understands the 7 provisions, 4, 5, 6, 7, there's the pyramid. That's all your body's made of, dimensional layers of space and time. What is in the center operation? Look at that, a ladder. Ooh, looks like a primer. That's what it is, it's a primer. Indicates position, all lines of flux. Capacitor, time calculations, screen lines adaptation, cross lines indication setting, all in position, flux capacitor. Okay, into travel. Intelligence. Wow. And this is all converted into the brain circuitry, location studying, and calculation studying to its cloud. That modifies everything inside position of its operation system of its intelligence. There it is. Boom. Okay. Setting tractions, setting locations. Its intelligence of its own information setting that lives on all levels of its dreamer that it is interpretation. Its own information of its own system and traction. Okay. So, drawing images is processing all line position, how you break these things down. You have to codify these things. And when you're codifying these things, that changes everything in the body itself. But the body has to be liquidized completely. Okay? And that's all you're doing. You're liquidizing your body, and they see what you already created through its city, which is always in that settings. Process positions, liquidize your assets. You communicate to your carbon position. Remember, it's all block frames, communication lines, the ground center of the sequence. So ground lines connect to the high position lines of travel, all lines, carbon base. Okay, which is a G flat screen. A G flat screen is one set lines of travel and direct lines of line connection. Okay, that's one position. So you understand that calculation screen lines, carbon base equals set travel, directions, calculated, modified, correlations, communications, set travel is point lines of graph, 0, 1 travel. Okay? It's all coding. It's all E factors of coding. All you're doing is you're liquidizing the actual set position, right? Then it comes in its own transits. Okay, you're decentralizing, you change the line into a holographic line. That's all you're doing. You're liquidizing your assets and you're turning it into all of those out of carbon base into silicon. Silicon comes into the correlations of travel that modifies how you come in your 24/7 signal, right? Now it's all solid matter, but solid matter is not solid matter. This is not solid. It looks solid to you because that's where you are in relation. That puts you in a position of fantasy story that we don't live in. Everything you see around you is constantly on a constant continuous flow of travel. It never ever is ever in the same frequency or the same body of its conceptual, of its mind inception itself. That process you have to use yourself in quad, okay? So that's what you're doing, okay? You're decentralizing the line, okay? So it's like a word, letter, number, shape, or symbol, or graph, and in that position of sentence or email line conditions, all you're doing is liquidizing your assets and you're turning it into silicon. That's silicon. Now, once you understand that, everything goes white. Okay? Cloak and dagger. Now let's go to location neutralized settings. I'm just showing exactly applicable, how you come into your proficiency, your efficacy, and your performance, how you liquidize yourself first. You can't create a crystalline world in a dream world if you don't see yourself in your own dream. You won't be able to identify yourself of you dreaming of what you're going through its dream. So you have to liquidize everything, your data, assets, your equities, okay, through your liquidities. That process your system. So this is what it is. You change your transits, change the information bits of your cells, modify the system, cloak and dagger, okay? All right, so once you do that, then you come in position, locations, and setting, crystalline, which is your 12 rainbows. So we start at the grounds, we overline the signals in black, which is the void, which is the negative, which is the empty space. So this is an overlap, but this takes you out of direct and redirect. So I'm just showing exactly how you get in chronological order, how you basically neutralize and centralize your systems of decentralizations into your settings. Okay, you start with that, right? Then you work your way up to your 12 settings, which is your rainbow sequence. Calculate and modify in red. Okay, so it's changing the particles and set lines of communication. So these are your resistors. That's inside your position that works with your cells. Soul regeneration, that's all we're doing. Okay, we're just crystallizing it into liquidization of your assets in set position. Okay, we start with that attractions. All right, now, once we do that, then we go up the chain, right, which is the quantum chain, different coloration lines, different patterns, different light metaphors. All right, so that puts position locations of blue. The foundations of your sim, okay, is black, red, and blue. And when you put your oculars on, you can see that. You can see 3 different divisions in one cycle. That's your simulation grounds of foundations. Living in the dreams of you and the dreaming, interpretation of you go through the dream. Start at that position, all right? Okay, and then you go up the ladder. Let's get into orange. Okay. Now I can go any color I want. I don't have, everything is in chronological order, so it doesn't mean you have to go in order. Order is how you see order. Not how you see 1, not how you see 2 or 3. But it's all identified as 0. Okay, 0 is the invisible chart wave. That's you in the center that you start off with in set position your Fiat financial system, off through traction. Okay? And then you just open up more, right? You see it's liquidizing into crystal. All right, so once we get in that position, let's start with coarse centers. Let's get into yellow. So we're just going up the chain, the quantum chain. All right, so yellow line, steady sequence, solar generation lines, overlapping set location and coloration lines and light metaphors. Taking every without a provisional location to its system all through tractions, okay? Okay, now understanding that position location is the antimantle. Antimantle is solid matter. That's where you come to pixelation graphs. So your TV receptor has to be an equivalent screen, directing lines of grounds. Let's go into snowy graph interference. Processing position location to its systems, all through travel, and then calculation settings. Okay, let's get into green, because green processes the operation what? The correlations of the custodian to your ledger. Green means go. Turn on the switch. Digitalize your systems all through traction. Okay? So that's what it starts to look like. Okay? All right. So once we get into that, let's just right away, let's get into 13 travel. Let's liquidize everything in position of gold. Okay, everything in the gold. Now, this is all transits and location system of calculate and modify. Liquidize and location your assets. The process how you do this in information setting to your mind in travel communication. Okay? All right, so we start with that. So that's what you do every single time you get to position your words. So you're creating a structure of schematics through crystal. All right, so, and you look at that position. All right? Okay, so once you come into that, it comes into this, solid matter. You're liquefying the frequency that you want in set position. Gold template, orange template, green template, doesn't matter. The templates and the tablets are based on your fiat financial system when it comes into your Ethereum, right? But there's a solid matter. So you're turning into gold templates, into gold in set position, right? There you go. There it is. There's liquidized, right? Now, it stores assist location to its companies. The process core sends to its assets. Line communicates to its platform. That's all position location to its systems, all through line connection setting to its quantum chain. You're creating a quantum chain, and you go up to the next level, into the next level, right? So you're creating deposits and cores of unification. Okay? But that's how you liquidize everything, gold template. Okay? So once you do that, stance proceeds, set positions, all settings. So that's a measure and scale. Remember, it's all memory cortex and sympathetic mystical cortex, design mind, and image location setting endorphins that kicks it in high drive and set lines of sequence. Process of that indication system puts everything all together. All right, so channels up, set lines of travel, platforms over lines, and set position its operation. Okay? So that's where it is. So it's in stocks and bonds. So you liquidize it and it goes into its complacent system where it's never left of its consciousness. It continues on in that position. So once you understand that position, that's where it is. Your data, your assets, your stocks, and your bonds. It goes to its platform. Okay? And so on and so on and so on. So you start with that, then you go with this. Let's go on this one. This is stock and bond. Okay, there's purple, all right? And here's pink. These are block shares. These are time shares. It's in position of its operation. Okay? So all it's creating is a pyramid from the bottom up. And once you create that, you create the platform, you create the rainbow, then you create the umbrella, then you create an energetic dome, and then you put it aside. There's your data, there's your assets, all liquefied, line position to allow with your properties, and you move on to the next pyramid. So you're building pyramid, 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 pyramid as you go higher and higher. Okay? So, just trying to get you guys to understand how this all works. Now, once you have liquefied agent systems of your equities and your liquidities in that settings, okay? The position lines, once the anti-carrying comes in position, the X2000 comes in platform and picks up your data assets. So picks up this, that's where you're going to be next. Okay, so picks that up, transfers it position, puts its storage into the moon to a backup file. That's where it comes into backdating options, location setting, travels. So it converts the system lines and position lines of travel. So it picks it up, okay, and position to its setting. So it doesn't keep it on the set position, it keeps it locked and chained through codification and encryptions, okay? So it picks it up, okay, and then it basically, it's in the ship, all right? So as it does that, it liquefies the grounds, it disappears, right, and goes out to the next platform. So it's not there. The stocks and bond disappears into the teleportation vessel, which is the antiquarian. The antiquarian goes into all of the alter skelter. The alter skelter is a mind operation system that alternates the system if you want to change something in your mind of structure, which is your MK Ultra. So it's very powerful. What goes on in position, all right? So that's a basic understanding, but seeing it through a pyramid and travel, okay? So that's what it is. It picks up the data assets, process its moon, backup file, set lines of travel, correlates communication system and calculation setting. Now the moon can be any shape and modification lines. So the moon itself turns into purple. Okay, because that's the equity, that's liquidity, that's where it is in travel. Okay, so Morse, 3 centers of set calculation. Okay, and it goes back in a new design. So it's an energy line position of pattern that monetize everything location setting. Monetization is where you come into your system, how to use that through your fiat in your financial system. That puts all processes of stocks and bonds. Now, understanding that through your ledger is understanding your custodian. How to use that is understand how to see that in digital coding, all through set position. But that's what goes on in process, seconds, minutes, and hours. Creating that pyramid from top to bottom, bottom to top. Okay? Remember this. Okay? And that setting. Okay? So when you have that, then it comes an energetic dome. Okay? You come into a dome around the system that protects it, right? You graph the setting, you lock it in through a graph of indication. Okay? So that's what it looks like. Okay? And then you move it over and you create new. Okay? Stance precedes everything. You're stamping preceding. Everything's pixelated. It's in an energetic dome, right? So it protects this location of its properties. So basically, once it comes into that, it comes into this. All right, so energetic dome, let's process the position of travel here. Start with that, right? Okay, so you got a pyramid here, pyramid here, pyramid here. These are your assets, your deposits, in your system, okay? So you can move them around too if you want. You can move them around wherever you want in that position, okay? So all you're doing is building an inventory. That inventory is how you identify these things through letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols. Each one has its own equity of its own assets of its own design. Okay? But you have to liquidize everything first. And that's where you go up to the channel. The operation of your structure, location of snorograph interference, so that's why your bodies have to be video screens. So it's much easier for them to teleport your system. And that's energize and optimize. So once you come into that, your body starts to change information to its system, right? Start with that settings, comes into this, snorograph interference, right? Then you cross angles. You start to recognize the platform, right? You live in imagination worlds. So once you break this down, you realize your body is nothing but pixelation. It's the treasury itself. So your whole body is nothing but a financial setting. It's amazing stuff. So that's one liquidity, location to your equities and your performances. And you have to truly understand how to pick this up in settings. Your whole body is nothing but its treasure itself. It has its deposit and its cores. Picking all that communicates to its graph, right? So once it starts to see a snowy graph of itself, it's much easier for the XT1000s to pick up the pixelation. Picks up the box frames, timeshares, block shares, and travel. Okay? Rather than just seeing the body as a story that doesn't exist. So the more it sees a graph, the more it sees a set position, because your body can understand what it's going through its alignment. So the body understands the alignment, and the oversoul understands the body. It's its vessel of teleportation and travel. So it becomes its own transponder. So coming into the next line setting sequence is the webbing system. Okay, the webbing system. Right? And look at that, face recognition. See, face right away. So it's expanding your pie and all lines of signal. Okay? So you have that platform, and you create another platform, another webbing system. You work up the quantum chain, okay, in your settings. Okay, so you're building an infrastructure inside your system. Okay, through clouds, set lines of communication, right? And then you create a whole level of communication around this system outside the setting. Okay? So it's the expansion that you come into in all modification, right? And then you have your position location, your systems, grounds, powers, and atmospheres comes in a graphical screen. So you have to understand how it has to come in its own position first. Then it comes into its block shares. These are block shares in the TV receptor. Okay? So each block share has its own setting of its own system. That's process of communication and direction. How allocates time frame, time share, time calculation times pi. So it's that cell communication system all through your pyramid. Okay? Your pyramid itself is inside of everything, interaction that you already see in that position. Okay? But you have to understand how to see the body is nothing of a video screen. Right? So it's much easier for the X3000 to come in and pick up your block shares. It sees you, okay, as its treasury. Time shares, block shares, time value, vast volume, all set position of operation. Then it just picks it up. And you come into the next lines of what you already created through acceleration. Okay? But it stores all that in the moon. That's the backup file. Everything has to have a backup file. So that way you can go back and see it. And say, oh, I said a timeshare block center, but I got to go back for vision. So I have to go back to the moon. We'll go back. Data asset process line, 1/4 flux. Oh, okay, I got 1/5, 1/4, 3/4, 2/4, time share. Waiting on signal, process calculating lines, receive on Tuesday. Refund, assets, data assets, liquidize my equities, setting process core centers, 24 lines of setting. So I know exactly when I'm going to get it on that day. Okay, that's expectation. So I'm just getting a basic understanding how this works, your equities and your performance, how you have to modify your body first to turn it into nothing but a pixelation graph. So it's much easier for the X3000 to pick up the block shares. Time shares times calculation times pi. Okay? It can't pick up a body in a story because there's no fabrication of a story. It has to pick up its settings. So it's kind of like, for example, if an XD is here and it doesn't see its blocks, okay, it's got to see this. Okay, that's what it has to have. This is what your TV body is. It's nothing but a video screen. So it's much easier to pick up blocks and travel through it and set position its locations and take it to its destination. Okay, which is this holographic system. And everything around that system disappears until you come into the next timeshare, next blocking screen, next location system of travel. Okay, so you're constantly protecting the coding to your encryptions, locations you're getting through your data assets. So everything dissolves inside the mind. Now, all you have to do now is understand how to control your thoughts, action, emotions, and crystallize everything and turn it into a holographic structure that processes your systems. The more you come in your confidence out of everything, of resistance, and everything around you formulates into the holographic city that you set up and design. Okay? Because you live in invisible worlds, guys. I mean, that's just, but you have to understand that everything is already built. But you have to see yourself first as your equity of itself. Is it liquefy everything? You have your data assets. You have to truly understand how to use your data operation systems. your CPU systems, you know how you basically see yourself through your computed system. It's much easier as you see yourself as vast in volume as your own asset that values you in set position. This helps you to identify yourself and how to see yourself through your own treasury of modification, your own e-trust fund, trusting yourself, acknowledging yourself, what your body's going through, is coming to the conception of mind inception, where you don't chase, it's all coming to you through attraction. But for you to understand that is to actually see your body, nothing but a video screen, a pixelation. Okay, that is your treasury on a TV. Let's go into TV frame. Let's start with that, right? It's a box frame, right? Box frame 80s, right? Tripod, so these are 3 settings. Okay, 3 different channels. Let's set travel, okay? Story graph interference, 3 centers or 4 center line communication, all right? All right. Your waving system, okay? The more you fast track your settings, your letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols, and the more you codify it, and the more you turn it into crystalline, the more you identify your holographic city, that it's designed in its settings. So you change the words, you liquidize that. You change your assets, it liquidizes that, and it comes into purification, a foundation of a story. You. Okay? So, each pixel, okay, is a block time share that's already in your system. It's your own treasury, your own setting, your own custodian, your own ledgers, a set design for you to pick up. But more lines of settings, when the XDC you do more, it's much easier to identify the system as you pick these things up in your seconds, minutes, and hours in frame in the day, right? All right. So I'm just trying to get you to understand how this all works in pixelation graph. It's all metaphorically designed, but these are your data, these are your assets, these are your deposits, and you have your digital key, which is your key holder. And the key holder defines your system, how you use it through all of the gatekeeper. The gatekeeper basically controls the corridors of the crystalline of your portals and stargates. The keymaster is the holder that changes the digital coding of encryption that keeps your modification lines and sending attraction. Okay? So, understanding all that when you look at a TV, okay, is to liquefy everything carbon and turn it into crystalline, and you do that through rainbows. Now, platforms are different lines of coloration of truth and false narrative. It's a lot different to understand how to communicate with your assets in a dream world, rather than understanding yourself in the position of 3-dimensional lines of fabrication of a physical world and set lines of communication, right? All this is your assets. This is your treasury. This is your trust fund. And it's all picked up through 3 dials of indication. So, as you come to the indications of this, or your dials, you understand how to see yourself as a quantum self. Now you have to understand how to liquefy every location of the channels of operation. You get into direct settings. You crystallize everything in panel, which becomes solid matter. Okay? So it's much easier to see it through the grounds in set position. Okay? Because every time you change a word, you're liquidizing it into crystalline. And you're setting up platforms of communication, your Ethereums, or anything in set position. Okay? So that gets you in positional locations how to modify these things and understand how to use it in a pyramid of activation. Okay? Platforms, settings, all through operation lines of sequence. Okay? But everything in the TV itself is your treasury that's already set for you. So that's a lot of pixelation settings to hologram. So the anti-carrying is the distributor and the import to the export to your systems. So basically, let's go in position of balance. Okay, that's sending attractions. Okay, that's you speaking, right? All right, so letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols are traveling out. Okay, as they're traveling out, it's really interesting. You come into that, it liquefies everything. And once you identify that, it's much easier to see that. Okay, just silicone. So it comes in 24, then you come to crystalline, then it cools down into the antimantle, that puts it in solid matter. How you see that in prophecy, how you see that in efficacy in your performance, knowing exactly what you're doing, is being choosing on what you do go with your words, know exactly what you do in a provision, stop being negative, always be positive, but always know you're always positive, knowing in position because you've already done these things through equation. So you're just modifying this all through WebDrive and screen. The procedure indicates the setting of Echo Sonar. So those are your block shares, right? So the letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols, okay, go into coloration, lines of colors, line of patterns, into a light metaphor. They come into a strip line and set lines of travel, okay? And we break up the block in shares, okay? So that's where it comes in a rainbow. That's why you have a rainbow looking at a rainbow. Okay, the actual rainbow is your pot of gold. You start with that, pink, okay, and orange. So we break down your block shares in time frame. Here, 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 and you pick up your equities and set lines of time. Okay, so you pick up this, it's done, right? Pick up this, it's done, right? You pick up this, it's done. You pick up this through time share. Okay, that's how it works. So now you understand what a rainbow is. Okay, so you got stock exchange. Now it gets much easier how to see it through the stock market of your system, understand how to use it through a financial and fiat system. But you have to understand how to understand the correlations of your rainbows, of your pyramid of subtraction. Okay? Line strip, and then you break down the block shares. Now this is data back options, locations, that puts you in your sanctions. Okay, so it's just 3 lines of signals. Okay? Inside position. Okay? So you break it down, you crystallize it, and then you basically build it up from the ground up. Okay? So it's very powerful when that happens. So when that happens in that position, XC thousands. Now, anything massive volume, a mothership comes in. Okay, starts with the XC thousands when you come to your stocks and bonds, and that puts all communication in your assets. So it starts with the XC thousands of the anti-carriers. They distribute, okay, your words, your thinking, your thoughts. They crystallize everything, and it customize your custodians to your ledger. Okay, now that process location lines means go, right? Ledger goes on, clocking system set up, sets up the grounds up of where you left off of your structure, of your schematics that you created through your crystal holographic system, which is your city. And you continue on, building that structure. The crystallization of liquidization, your assets. It's much easier because the Oversoul's already created a hologram of its system. Your Earth is nothing but a hologram. And to understand that is understand how to use that in a modification through space modulation. Okay? Now, getting in that position to understand how to use that is customizations. It's handling your situation. Is your handler, your URL. Okay? That gets you efficacy of your performance and knowing exactly what you're doing as you're constantly liquidizing everything to what you're structuring is infrastructure your system of your holographic city that's already set and designed. And the body just has to be acknowledged of what's going on, that it's already done through its equation. And it's much easier to process that through, okay, all levels and travels and direction, right? So the mothership picks up all lines of this, okay? So it's pretty amazing stuff when it comes into that, right? Because now you come into all levels and more levels of stocks and bonds and trading. Now, once you understand how to see yourself as a consumer to a product, to a byproduct, then you understand what you're doing when you're engaging and viewing agencies, advertising, and advertisements. Then you understand how to come in your own bidding. Then you come into your own set position. Then you come into all of the stock bonds, stock change. You come into positions how to use yourself as a stock market system, as a financial system, fiat system. Try to understand how to see that in motivation. Try to understand how to see that in your echo platforms. Try to understand how to use that in a pixelation graph. Try to understand how to use that in location of deposits in your cores and your unifications or your bio-unification setting to start to see the golden templates of you, of liquidizations, which is your equity and your assets, your economies, your social network system, your social metric system, your social media system, your political system, your financial situations. That puts every line into balance, how you see that in your own set position of operation. Okay? So basically, that's how it works. Okay? Through monetization. So that goes on a constant continuous flow, every second, every minute, every hour. But what goes on is the XT1000s are the anti-carriers in set position, okay? And the motherships are massive volume, what picks up your stocks and bonds. So dollar signs, okay? Trifactors, triboxing, screen line connection setting, position location, crystals, diamond cores, all right? Okay, XT1000s pick that up. Anything higher that position, mothership. Picks up your stocks and your bonds and your equities and your assets. Okay? That's how it works inside your system. Now, understanding that is really understanding how to see that set position in your system. And it gets a lot more easier how you see that in your own system in traction. But you have to liquefy your body first and know exactly what you've always lived in is the quantum self. The webbing is understanding the animations of its system, how it's created through its own network of its own system, right? It's its own quantum activation setting. It's its own metric system. It's its own social media. It's its own political. It's its own company system. It's knowing your body using as a network system. And you use it through a quantum field system. Everything's systems. It's systematically designed for you already. So what you have to start identifying is how do you see it as an equity of your own assets, of liquidizations, through your liquidities. But that's how it operates. And that's what goes on every second, minute, hour of your day. Okay? Why you see XT1000s and why you see motherships and why you see star command ships and why you see flight ships and flight command ships and all that settings. They're just picking up your assets every single time, but keeping you in storage of its moon. So it keeps it in position to all lines of a backup file. Backup dating. Then you got backup dating options and 3 centers of travel. So it's really interesting we come into that more lines of setting because we understand how to use that information system all through words of indication. So our words are traveling out. That's trading and inventory. That's stocks, bonds, and trades. Tradings and set position of the stocks are going through a bidding, but understand how to see yourself as a consumer and everything you're engaging with, the agencies, the advertising, the advertisements of you, is how to protect your liquidation of assets, which is your crystalline, living in the holographic system that you already set up through the city of design. Okay? So it's very powerful, isn't it? All through a graphing screen. Okay? So once you get in that position, it's much easier to see these things, your planetary alignments. Graphing screens. Start with that position. Right? So these are your assets that are picked up. Like this. Okay? Going in the same direction of thoughts, action, motions. So you don't get confused what you're doing with your anomaly. You're going in the same direction, so it's much easier for the mothership to come in and take the massive volume out through its equation. So as it picks it up, it precedes the system, okay? And you've got a mapping system already set up, circulation, rotation, into frame, communication lines, and grounds. So you already have your platforms already set up to your holographic city. That's already set up in structure of design. Okay? So the XT1000 or the mothership, okay, just drops off the crystalline from bottom, working way to the top. That's that position. That's all it is. So it's very cautious what you do with your words. Anything negative, okay, it sets off tone. So let's say you're creating a box, right? And obviously you come into a negative word, it split lines of anomaly. Okay, so now this is split in a 3 triangulation setting. Separated mind, back and story. Okay, so you got to rebuild it again. Crystallize the self, telling, the operation, readjusting, remembering, releasing, you out of story. Structure line, direction line, communication line, high information system. There it is. Structure and design, holographic city. Okay, so all you're doing is creating platforms. Starting up with the 7 line, which is set position, which is digital framing. Okay, so once you understand the economic system, your urology system is how you see yourself, your human planetary system, which is your models and prototypes. You understand how to come into your setting of your digital numbers and your area codes. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, there's your pyramid. Okay, so everything is picked up through the XT and the mothership. Mothership picks up the volume. Okay, XT picks up the smaller assets of your system. But it goes to the moon through a backup file. So you know exactly where it is and stored of your system. Okay, you still have your equity. So you have to understand how it modifies the moon and goes through the sun in set position of projection. So it's all levels how you see it on different angles of communication. All right? The rubbing system is operated from inside outside projection and 4 settings of signals, which is your ground lines, position, location, your settings, process calculation, your crop circles. Triangulation over here, overline signal, overline set location of its travel. Driving inside line counts the setting, process of indicate position inside and out through travel. That indicates lines in the line course centers and line settings through triangulation lines, split lines of anomaly. Indicate lines, flush over screen, directing ground centers on sequence, on communication, on the fly. Okay? So it's try to understand how this all works inside your system off the travel. Okay? So just get your ground set up. Okay, so once you get that, you got your position, then you come in your umbrella. Okay. Closed signal. Okay. There's your files. There's your encryptions. There's your data. And set position, your operations. Okay. Mothership comes in and picks up all that and set lines of travel. First it scans it. Make sure it's in position. Make sure everything's crystallized. Nothing's in story. And then it picks it up on its platform and set position. So it communicates the grounds first, all through setting. Okay. Which is your earth. Where your crop circles are, indicated position of flux. Okay. The monotone device and rotation lines of grounds, ascent lines of sequence. Your crop circles. Okay. So that's where it comes in dispatch and discord. It picks up the information sending to travels. I use your telepathy signals. So it's very important how mothership comes in and how it picks up more massive volume of stocks and bonds and then distributes and imports and exports. Now, what you guys understand how to basically come into the discharge is the asset of itself location that puts it into the quantum sphere. That processes communicates the system, how you see that all through circulation and rotation. All right? As this fan is going extremely fast, but as soon as I point my finger, it's picking my information panel. It sees me as a commodity. It sees me as an asset. It sees me as crystalline. It sees me as a dream. It sees me who I am because I brought it in through attraction. We don't need to identify each other. We just have to identify what we're always in, is the dream itself. The dream itself has the better directions, how to see the intelligence of its readjusting system, of its existing, of its communication, of its travel. Direct. So once you stand direct, you have to stand redirect. And direct becomes one. A modification. Right? So you start with this. Remember you started with this? Then you go from this to this. Right? Now you go, basically you have to go like this in setting. Everything around your system has to disappear in its network, its webbing system, into its imagination itself, which just becomes the mind. We just live in the mind. We are the mind itself. But when everything disappears, we start living, forever existing. But we're constant always into exchange, which is different bodies adaptation, right? So I'm just trying to get you guys to understand how this all works, where there's no errors of indications until you bring everything in through the mind, imagination setting. Okay. Okay, so when it disappears, it moves to another location. Okay? But it's constantly living. It knows what it's doing all through travel, guys. Okay, it knows itself, it identifies itself, it knows where it is, where it never left. It's always been in the quantum of itself. Imagination is just the images, how to process yourself of dream of indication. But your body has to be consciously aware of where it is in its seconds, minutes, and hours. Okay, it has to literally see itself turn into crystal. So it's the connections where the connection of the oversoul connects to the body, and the body connects to the alignment of the oversoul, and the oversoul connects to the body as its vessel. Once you mutate into yourself, you become liquidization and crystalline setting location of the dream itself. So you come in your own interpretation, how you see the mind of inception, the actual worlds that we live in, is the dream, which is absolutely amazing. Okay, and then you truly understand how to not just acknowledge the body, but the body comes in its conception of its mind. It starts to accept what's going on with the system. It starts to realize it doesn't need to do anything because it's already done through everything through its equation. And the more you come into your equities and assets, and the more you understand you are your own system, that's its own treasury, of its own e-trust fund. Well, things get a lot more easier of understanding to be understood. And that's how you guys come through your own pie generation systems. That's how you come into your own activation system. That's how you come into your future every now system. So in that position, setting lines of sequence, lines of tomorrow, 2 panels, process of indications, all through travel. Okay, that's the bridge. Okay, so in that position, like I said, you're going to see it on all platforms, but it's going to disappear. When it disappears, it puts position location and setting through Y screen. Directing ground centers, position location and setting all through travel. Process of indicate line calculation setting comes in ground lines of sequence. So you see how it disappeared right in front of you, right? That's what's going to happen. So everything in position that you're not in falsification, the bridge is going to disappear. So there's no story to applicable through. So set lines of circulation, rotation lines, that process location to bridging, sense lines of communication. There's the bridge. There's the grounds. All right? So all that's going to disappear. All that's going to disappear. Okay? So there's no more fabrication of story to go through. Cross-referencing, crossing streams. Okay? So all that is going to be gone into the webbing 3 in your mind's of conception itself, which is the dream that you are, the dreamer that you are a position of, and the dreaming that you go through the mind and conception of its mind itself. Okay? So all that's going to be gone. So oversouls are going to be on standby, all in setting. Okay? It's really interesting coming to that setting locations. So let's get into 2 bridging set line sequence. Okay, position line to travel. Here and here. Okay? Alright, so oversouls here. Okay? There's all the oversouls. Alright? On standby. Back into the quantum of their chain, where they never left their system. Alright? They're all there, right? So all their bodies are going to be over here. Okay? Higher level setting, low frequency grounds. They can't continue on a story anymore. So they'll be lost in signal of transition, a translation, a transcribe. Okay? There's a separation. Okay? Activation equals quantum. Okay? AQ equals AI. Atmosphere of intelligence. Okay? So in that position locations. So in that convergence system, this is what happens to the bodies. They lose track provisions and they go low spectrum automatically. Living the 12 line settings 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay. So all this is going to be on standby. All this, okay, is going to go through the deflation system, right, which is an evac. The evac itself is the process of position locations, taking all the identification of your souls out of your system. Of mind is separation. Okay? So, that's what's going to happen. And that's where the karma cycles come in. Rotation settings, lost souls, all directions, where you left on your consciousness. Okay? So you get a true understand how this all works. Come into everything that you've always been in, as a quantum self. But recognizing that, you can't have separation of your body. Your body has to stand in alignment. And like I said, the oversoul has to see the body as its vessel. So you can merge together through a quantum system and understand how to see it all through formation. Through a GOD. Directions, directing line settings, the geometric operation of design, the basic understanding, the instructions, how to use yourself, how to use the telepathy of yourself. That's all this is. But everything's going to be in the quantum webbing of 3. Web 3. Earth 0.30. Okay? Which is the animation equals AI. Okay? Animation AI. So, that's something to look forward to in supposition lines of travel. That indicates everything that you have to process through in supposition to its operations. Okay? See you in 5.